Being early sounds like a good thing until it kills your idea. Vision is only power if the market is ready for it. If you're too early, you bleed out while waiting for everyone to catch up. Today we're going to be talking about exactly that. Visions can be great, and visions might be what's needed and what the future requires, but sometimes we rush ourselves or the market isn't actually ready for us. So we have the idea that the world needs, but they don't know they need it yet. At least that's how I interpret it. So, do you think timing is just luck, or is there a way to logically estimate market readiness?
So to answer your question first, I'm going to narrow it down and talk about how this is for products that don't exist yet. The first question is, do I think timing is just luck? I don't think it's just luck. I think there are many things there, but also, can you logically predict market readiness? I think there's an aspect of that, but I don't think that's everything. I think there's other ways to view it as well, not just through measurements. I don't think that's a complete story either.
So what measurements, if there are any, then would you use to decide what vision to go with?
Speaking personally, I would use like as direct metrics as I can, which means, for example, like you put out a landing page for a product, and then if a lot of people sign up, I mean that's a signal, at least. That's something you can hear, you can listen for. But I personally wouldn't trust like number of signups as like the metric to use, but rather I think it's like more indefinite metrics like excitement or just like it's almost like a gut feeling that the world is ready for this now kind of idea.
So let's define what being early actually means, because even doesn't really make sense maybe without actually thinking about it or having thought about it previously. So what I define as being early is, let's say you have a great product. Okay, I'm not saying something that you fantasized about or that you personally feel is great. I'm talking about you actually have a great product or vision or idea. But what I would say is that if you have that and it's the market itself. So I'm going to use the word market broadly here. I mean, we're talking about people, we're talking about businesses, we're talking about whatever. I mean, any sector, doesn't matter in the entire world. If the market itself is not educated about that particular product or what that product offers, or if that product is so advanced that it solves a problem that we don't even know we have yet or don't know how to sort of visualize the problem itself, then I would say that would be doing something before the market is ready or educated. Another thing is, even sometimes there are great ideas, great products, great visions, but the market just isn't that time, right? It's like the market's not hungry for it. And I feel like the supply and demand there, the demand has to be there as well. So while that's a very traditional metric, I still feel like that's an important thing as well. So what do I mean by creating something, a great product that's too early? For example, let's say you invent something that nobody understands. So that's what I'm talking about before, if they're not educated. So there have been a lot of great inventions in the past that people just didn't have a clue what it was or what it was trying to do, or I found that fear plays a big part here as well. They're just like, oh, that's just not right. I don't know how to describe that. So having people actually understand what it is that you've created is very important. And I think we can talk about that as well here in a bit as to what I mean by that a little bit more specifically. Another example of something being created too early is if someone was to build a tool that people don't know that they need. So it's the same thing I sort of mentioned before. While I'm talking, I'm trying to think of an example. We will be going through real examples of things that were created in the past that weren't ready yet. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to think of like a tool that we might use now or something might be in the works that people don't know they need. My brain wants to go towards cryptocurrency, but I don't really think that I can justify that even yet, because I'm not even sure if it is something we need or not. I know that fiat currency is designed with the flaw that every fiat currency that exists on the earth will eventually become overinflated and basically have to be gotten rid of. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that if you agree with that. But I'll just go to the last thing then. So another thing is timing. So like I said, if the market's not hungry for it, if the market's not really like, okay, if it's not in demand, then you will lose. If you could have the greatest product in the world, if the timing's wrong. I've noticed this with YouTube. I've noticed this with, well, I'll stick with YouTube for the moment. Like almost 10 years ago, I created a YouTube channel, and I would say I even started a little bit late on a Let's Play. And like Let's Plays were huge at the time, but it was huge for people who already were in the game for years. And those people were sort of decided. So it was really hard to sort of break through. So even if I had, let's say, I'm not claiming I had a good channel, but like even if you had a really great novel idea of a way to approach it that's very entertaining, because this is an entertainment thing, I would say that the timing there would have been incorrect. If you would have done it a few years before, or maybe wait for the next cycle, it would have been ideal. That being said, can you think of any products that you know of, or any even maybe ideas you had that the timing just wasn't there, or just, I don't know, there was just something missing and you felt that it was too early, just too early in general? Or do you know of someone else? It doesn't have to be you.
Okay. If I can go way off of this, because I personally want to share my own opinion, which is that timing isn't necessarily like being too early. I think often isn't necessarily. I mean, sure, it's a thing, but it's like one factor of many. And one place I really reference when I think about this is streaming on Twitch. When people stream on Twitch, new people are being discovered all the time, even though like streaming's been around for like 10 years now, 15 years. And as you were explaining that, I've been reflecting on like, how is that even possible? What's happening? And I think there are many factors. For example, one thing I can add is emerging platforms. And these emerging platforms have high discoverability, and thus someone else has the chance to capture, I guess. So going back, thinking about that, there actually is timing there in a micro sense, but the macro sense of timing in Twitch wasn't so much of a factor. So for example, when TikTok was on the rise, that creates room for another person to emerge as a streamer on Twitch, right? So I'm going to have this complicated answer to say that, sure, maybe I'll say almost like timing perhaps matters on a micro sense, but on the macro sense, there's all kinds of good times in a certain industry, for example.
Yeah, so I guess maybe I should have defined what I meant by, my point of view here, which is I'm looking at things from the individual, so the micro sense of it, so from the company. So Twitch, the company, macro or micro, that doesn't matter. Twitch, the company, was successful. Their timing was okay, but from a micro sense, or from the point of view of the individual, the timing mattered. And so from here, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter how we look at it, but I'll at least say that I'm looking at things from the point of view of like myself, for example. If I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this podcast and I'm like, okay, I do have a great idea, and I really don't know. I've actually been asking the same question: when should I go to market? Or is this something that the market's ready for? Or is this something that I should even do at all? So these are the types of questions that I'm hoping that I'm answering. So I'm looking at it from that point of view. We can still look at it through a theoretical lens, or through different lenses as well. That's also fine.
Yeah. So one place I've been, like, as you were talking about your things, I've been reflecting upon just my observations in the Twitch streaming world, and yes, like observing all of that, I think especially in this world of like high discoverability with platforms that make it possible to create its own audience, right? I just think these days more and more that timing is not an issue, because if I look at the whole thing, I see people pop all the time. You know, it's just happening. Like every month there's someone new, and so from that perspective, I think I don't have so much stock in this idea of being early, and I think like almost I can say like quality will rise to the top, and platforms will allow you to be discovered. That's what I've seen.
Okay, so what I heard, what you said, I was immediately thinking, again, I'm looking from how can the individual optimize their chances? And yes, claiming and truthfully that there are people popping all the time is not incorrect, but for every one person that pops, there's 10,000, 100,000, maybe a million people that didn't. And so I see that as a whatever the probability that is, whatever percentage that is, as a success rate. So what I'm trying to do here is help people to strategize to know when to execute so they can maximize their probability of popping, so to speak, or whatever it is in their market. So I would argue again, counter-argue that timing does matter for the individual. Timing doesn't matter overall because there's always somebody popping. Yeah, sure, because there's always a group mindset of whatever trend it might be, that okay, this is what's trending, so more people's eyes are going to be looking in that direction and wanting that, and that will cause the person with the highest quality of that genre, let's say, to quote unquote pop. But again, it's still probability. And trends are something that we could talk about at length of what is trendy and how do trends start, and what is a trend, and why don't certain other things trend, and why do cycles exist, and all these things. So I think that's the thing with visionaries and people who have visions is knowing, sure, is it trendy, is it not trendy? It doesn't matter. What's most important is this the thing? If I can see where the trends are going, where the next trend is going to be in the world, then that's what I'm building for. I'm building for that trend. The problem, though, is timing, again, is very important because you have to be really fast. You have to get to the market really fast. And for some people, that's a lot of risk, but it's also very uncomfortable. And that also still has a certain degree of, let's use the word luck. I don't believe in luck. I'm just saying, like, if you don't choose the right thing at the right time, you're going to be in that group of 10,000, 100,000 people who didn't make it. However, like I said, even though you followed the trends, you have the right idea, you can still fail. If for some reason the people that you're talking to or the people you're trying to sell to aren't ready for it. So far you've argued that you don't think timing matters, and I think timing does matter. I'm still going to kind of keep hounding you with questions in that regard, because that is sort of the topic today, is timing. And being too early is the argument that you can be too early. You can also be too late, but that's easier, right? Being too late. So if someone brought you, so let's say you're a VC or something, venture capitalist. Someone has a great idea, but you have the foresight to know that it's just 5-10 years too early. Let's say 5 years too early. Would you want to help them build it anyway, or do you truly think that waiting for the right time is better?
So let's start with the assumption that I knew for a fact it was 5 years too early. And so the question is, would I help them build it? And I personally think I would, because the way I usually think is too early, too late for me. Like, okay, it's I'll use the analogy of like a tree. Like a tree will eventually grow to maximum height. And I don't have to be there. So like okay, 5 years too early, sure. In the 2 years that I spend with them and then I determine it's too early, I will have developed a lot of side skills. I will have learned a lot about a certain industry. Maybe I would have determined exactly why it was too early, and then I can branch out and move on. So if I help build something and I realize, okay, here's one definite reason why it's too early. They need this. Well, then what if I adjust and move to a company that builds that? Because I know that is like the more pressing need of this industry, for example. That's the way I would think about this. So to me, I don't think it's so like black and white 5 years. I think about like every step along the way is progress to me.
Okay, so using a finite number like 5 years is just a placeholder. It doesn't. So the point here is you pretty much have a hunch. Nobody really ever knows. So I guess maybe you took it a little bit too literally. You have a hunch. You know that like, yeah, it's a great idea, but it's just, oh man, I feel that it's just not ready yet. And let's say it takes us a year to build it. I'm pretty sure when we're done, it's just the timing just isn't right. And so I was just really asking if you would just try to time it better. And when you mentioned like planting a seed and a tree is going to be a tree, yes. However, again, let's say you don't know that you're planting a tree. If you plant a seed and it grows, cactuses grow from seeds. But let's say it grows a cactus, then well, you didn't expect a cactus, right? You still got something. So it's not, we don't know all the answers in this scenario. So I guess I kind of could have worded it better. That being said, yeah, I personally I would just have to tell them I'm sorry, it's just not time yet. But I would keep in touch with them and be like, hey, why don't we revisit it, or why don't we work on maybe something like an MVP for now and table it for now? Because I know how devastating it can be to put in a lot of resources, and that's including time, personnel, physical resources, etc., money, whatever you want to call it. That it's far worse when you do that and you have a lot of people to answer to at the end of the year or at the end of a quarter or something, and there's no revenue. Obviously, unfortunately, that's markets. Revenue is important, profit's important. Of course, it'd be really great if we could all be just altruists and just do everything for free and get everything we needed for free and just did stuff for fun all day.
So I was reflecting on the answer that I gave to you before about the perspective I have about, whether a decision is too early. And, my background is in tech, so I use a lot of these examples of tech to build my worldview. And I've been reflecting on the company examples of Twitter is one, and then the other is actually YouTube. So with Twitter, the idea is Twitter actually, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story, Twitter is actually just a single idea from one of the developers that just happened to be there. They were actually called Audio. They were a podcasting company, and it was too early for podcasts, right? And then they were in emergency defense mode, and they just asked people, what's your best idea? And this quiet voice guy who ended up the CEO, Jack Dorsey, he said, oh, I have this idea of like a text messaging app, making something like that. He made that, it caught on, and then they were able to just get funding from that. So that's an example of the word pivoting, right? And like in the span of a day, the whole company's mission completely changed. And then YouTube was once a video dating company as well, and then they expanded out into videos. And so, when I think about like timing and things like that, I reflect on examples like this, and I think my perspective is much more of this place of like things can always branch, things can always change if you'd like. And so I guess this reflects upon the philosophy I have that's much less vision focused, I guess I would say.
I feel somewhat like you've proven my point. You mentioned two companies that were doing something that the market wasn't ready for, or that was too early, and then an idea that was timed correctly for the market was pivoted to, which solidifies the argument that things can be too early, and that it takes a visionary or somebody with a great idea, it doesn't have to be a visionary, I guess, to sort of drag the company out of whatever funk it's in or whatever problem it's in. So I don't know if that's how you see it, or if you can see it that way, but
I also think that's completely valid. And I might also say, in my view, that the people, they were able to see, like they were able to pivot into these things because they were at the exact point they were. And yeah, so I would completely agree that yes, the original ideas were too early. And I just have this view that they discovered that, sure, they might have been able to discover it earlier, but they discovered it when they did, and that put them in a great position to pivot into something else.
I hear you. I'm not quite sure those two examples of what exactly transpired, but either way, we ended up with two really great products from two great visionaries. So this is a perfect time to segue into the next thing, which is talking about innovations that, at least at the time of conception, failed.